Hello, everybody. Good morning to the United States. Hello and good evening to Europe. And we have the pleasure and honor to see our friend Martin Schneider again in our show. Hello, Martin. Good to see
Hey,
you.
good to see you guys. How y'all doing?
Doing good.
Well,
Always
Doing
happy to
good.
have you.
Can't complain enough as usual.
today we
Or what he said. Yeah.
have a thrilling topic chosen, the value for money perspective, which is very much something I would like to dig in more deeply together with you and with the others. Value-based pricing sounds to me like a real value for what we deliver and fair pricing. And we are very interested that you get an honest job for your dollar.
Yeah.
To put it in my stupid analyst words, such as how I understand it. But before we dig in a bit more deeply, we would like to those, there must be only two or three which don't know you, Martin, but for just these three, as I learned from today, we would like to introduce you by yourself a bit in more depth, what you have done in the ages and stations before you joined Fabulous SupportLogic.
Especially
Absolutely.
the ages.
The ages, yeah. It feels like it sometimes. So I began my career actually as a journalist, right? I came out of school with a literature degree and it was a weird time coming out as the, mid to late 90s. The newspaper industry didn't have a great future. I worked in magazines and things, so it was always kind of odd. So, but the business to business publications were actually where, strangely, you could make a little extra money, and it was actually interesting stuff, and they were still kind of lively and vibrant, right? So I went over to from a Condé Nast division over to left there and went to Information Today, which had CRM Magazine. So I started writing for CRM Magazine, and was an editor over there. And I think I crisscrossed with Marshall. Did we ever work together there? Was I gone?
No, I think I came in right after you left.
You might have replaced me, to be honest.
Yeah, maybe not. I'm not sure if I replaced you directly, but I was the one who wound up in your position, just like David took over for Ginger.
Exactly.
Like David Myron and Ginger Conlon, if anybody.
Great people. You don't know them.
Yeah.
Find those people. They're awesome. And so then I went over to the analyst side with 451 Research and really got much more deeper into the kind of tech of things and the whole vendor kind of life cycle and history and all that, and got really enamored with a number of different things, especially open source, because I thought, talking about value today, I mean, this is something where really disrupting the value chain when it came to both building, deploying, and even paying for software. Sugar CRM was one of the first open source applications. Had a great relationship with those guys. Went over, worked for them off and on for over a decade. Then really got enamored with AI, seeing where intelligence layers, rather than like operational and transactional layers, systems of record, they're so commoditized. They're I'm just kind of over them, right? I want to see where's the future, right? It's really around insights, value, and doing things that are kind of like by design, right? I don't want a system that I have to put data in. I want a system where the data is already there and it's telling me things that I can't possibly know as a human being, right? And SupportLogic is one of those, right? And we do that for the support operations, right? Where we're taking, analysis of 100% of your interactions, right? And telling you things you didn't know, right? So that was really exciting to me. So I've been here now for a little over a year, about 13, 14 months. It's been super exciting, super high growth. We have amazing customers who are transforming the role of support in their organization. And I think especially B2B company, should be doing that and being part of that kind of revolution. And I think it's the last bastion of like transformation is really exciting, because we saw, in the subscription economy, SaaS economy kind of revolution in tech, First, it was like, well, we had to deliver the software a different way. Then we had to charge for it a different way. And now we have to support it a different way. And I think that's what people are starting to learn. The as a service is a different thing. So it's just been really exciting to help companies in that transition, especially more like legacy big companies like, like your Palo Alto Networks, Aruba, people like that. And even, new SaaS companies that are coming out every day like Coveo and people like that work with us. So it's really, really cool.
Do they really charge in a different way? These SaaS companies?
Well, I mean,
they just call
they
it
moved from
differently?
perpetual to subscription, right? I mean, that was a big change, right? And that meant, what did that mean? That meant they had to get the business again every year, right? Remember, like, what happened to Siebel once they saturated the market? 20
Is it?
Because they didn't earn the business back every year, and they had to go back and find it. New business, so expensive, right? Keeping your customers happy, expanding on those, creating a customer success culture, which we're seeing now, and companies like Gainsight just coming up to even support that concept. This is a really huge transformation, right? And support plays a vital role in that, right? If you think about it, right, in a B2B relationship that lasts how many years? How much of the interactions are in sales, marketing versus support and success? I'd say it's 70-80% are in support or success, because that's where the rubber really meets the road. That's when you're deploying the product, you're learning and adopting and getting champions, you're reselling, you're upselling, you're renewing, you're supporting issues, you're fixing problems, and you're just creating that relationship there. The sales and marketing side is like this much, really. So it's really kind of exciting to be part of that.
It does make me wonder sometimes. This kind of chains off of something we were saying before we started. Customer success is, it's a very specific area of the business. It's getting the customer up and running, functioning, using the product. But isn't customer success really everything you do to help the customer out? I mean, it's customer support. They're not succeeding if you don't support them.
Of course. You're 1,000% right. So our chief customer officer, Judith Platts, who came over from Salesforce, and she's got such an amazing perspective on everything. She's awesome. And she's been so great to have. She's so great. But she said in a talk with our chief revenue officer, they did kind of like a fireside kind of chat right the other day. And it was really cool. Like she basically was like, look, everybody's in customer success. Kind of like, we used to say everyone's in sales, right? But at the end of the day, is everything. But when it comes to customer success and making the customer happy, like support and success need to be together. Even like marketing, it's like, look, if you overpromise and underdeliver, marketing's not helping customer success, right? Am I wrong? Do you know what I mean? So that alignment, right? And product needs to be part of that, because one of the pillars when I think of like, we'll eventually get to talking about what we want to talk about in value-based pricing, but one of those, but maybe, who knows? But
next time.
But aligning the product to what people need, what they want, and in a way that they can consume it properly and easily and get adoption and all that, that's a huge thing. And so product's part of customer success, right? Very much so, right? Obviously. But obviously support is, and customer success is not renewals management, right? So many people got it wrong for so many years, just reallocating salespeople to be the renewal guy, right? And that was a huge mistake. And I've seen, companies that just did it horribly, right? They just said, "Hey, we're gonna break off like 5 salespeople, give them 400 accounts, and make sure that they renew." How is that? How are you promoting success with that?
You won't. And this is the same way I would jump in, such as you made several statements. I just want to dig in one or two. The first thing is Siebel. Siebel was an on-premises product.
Yeah.
Being an on-premises product, Siebel is still or was in the challenge that they did make only half-hearted with the IBM solution pack a cloud version of its product. And then they got bought by Oracle. What the heck? I'm sorry, I am afraid there is still something making noise, which
Not
I
me,
did
bro.
not intend. Yeah. Siebel there had a point in having an in-depth product, but they had also the attitude, not only being quite arrogant, in the registration, and they had these challenges for salespeople in the middle accounts and in the larger accounts business, that they had up to 400 customers and make them happy. Renewals, end of deal. They had hunters and they had farmers. So I absolutely agree. It's not the way how you make happy customers. The second is you can't make happy employees, because they get frustrated.
Absolutely.
And there was another fascinating thing, because it drives directly into the value-based pricing, not over-promising, but realistic promising, realistic delivery, and then a fair opportunity in the usage of the realistic delivering. And now you jump in. How is that properly priced? And how can we differentiate between different customer types, small, medium, large? Yeah.
Yeah. And look, for us, it's kind of easy, right? For us to understand value and what we do, I like to take it down. Like, too many people think of like ROI's got to be this big like number, right? And maybe that's true when you're selling like giant platforms and all this kind of stuff. But for us, it's like, if I can say to somebody, how many managers do you have? How many case reviews do they have to do per agent per week? And how long does that take in a manual world? If they're hunting into Zendesk and having to read 50 cases just to find one that is worth a review to say, you did this well, you didn't do this well, or you did this really bad, and finding 3 of those, that can take hours per agent per week. What if I told you, I'm reading 100% of your cases, I'm serving that up to you in a Kanban view, you can click through it, I'm telling you what to tell them about. Here's the interesting moment.
Brilliant.
Yeah, this takes 3 minutes. So if I'm taking an 8-hour process per week, a whole day of a manager's time, shrinking that down to an hour. So I'm giving them almost their whole day back on a Friday or whenever they do this, right?
Yeah.
Is that worth $10 to you? I would think so.
No, let's put a wrench into the argumentation. Usually those SaaS companies charge 2 weeks of work for the same manager. Now we have a value price problem again.
Well, exactly. So that's why I'm saying bringing it down, right? So like if I can create, I've got a sales guy who's really, really good at establishing the concept of value for what we do, because he kind of works in what we call like, he calls it like his rounding error mentality, right? He says, what's your cost per case, right? And some people, like, we have different customers. Some of them have $70 cost per case. Some of them have a $700 cost per case, right? So it's really easy when it's $700, right? It's the highly complex, B2B stuff. It says, look, if I can do all those things I just talked about, right? And, do these things, and your cost per case at 100,000 cases is, 700, if I can do this for like a couple dollars a case, it's like a rounding error for you guys. And that becomes just like not even an assumption of value, but it just becomes like value as an afterthought, right? So it's like this becomes, for less than what you're going to pay a fully ramped manager, you could probably start using our product for a year. Isn't that worth that? There's no risk involved in that, right? When you're at scale, right? So you break it down to these little things, and again, it's like, do that, and it's got to be, product needs to be aligned to the needs. It's got to be purpose built. It's got to be easy. You just mentioned Siebel, and I don't want to denigrate his new company, because we're an AI company, they're an AI company, but it's like, again, it's like you look at C3, it's like, I don't know what that is. I wouldn't know how to start using that. I don't know what it does necessarily. Go to the website, go look at that stuff. It's probably great. It's probably amazing. Just like Siebel was literally the best CRM that ever was and ever will be. But I don't know how to get started with it. And I've been working in CRM for 30 years. Do you know what I mean? I don't, it's like, it's too much, right? Same idea. We're all that AI, all that machine learning, all that NLP, all that cool stuff, but it's built towards pointing at your cases, finding the stuff that's going to escalate. Pointing at your cases, finding the interesting moments to better coach your agents, keep them engaged, keep them happy, right? Find the health score by looking at like 17 different leading indicator factors, not a survey, right? How do we just pick 3 or 4 or 5 use cases where people aren't doing a good job today and make it dead simple? So that, I'll pay $1 each time I get an insight out of that. And you add that up at scale, we make good money, they get good value. It's that simple, right?
Yeah.
That's
I
the
like
that everyone talks about.
Devil's definitely in the details, but at the highest level, that's the way we want to think about it, right?
Okay. And you had a very convincing position, such as if this was $10 for you, if you get a manager, enable a manager to do a job a lot faster, which is a job he finds annoying, because he wants to get to a success point. And the success point could then generate more money because he can advise and guide his team, which is taking care of the customer, to progress to more cost enabling opportunities or turnover enabling opportunities.
Mm-hmm.
And
forgive the sales term, but can you afford not to have that?
And I think that's what it's coming to, right? I mean, that's the idea, is everyone's going to be either building, buying, partnering, whatever it takes to get more intelligence around that, right? And in a world where employees have more and more power, or at least, it becomes more and more expensive to replace them, right? You want to keep people around, you want to keep them happy, and they're going to be expecting those tools, and that's, I think you're saying it. These are becoming, in a way, intelligence is becoming a commodity, but delivering it isn't easy if you're building it yourself or you're using 20-year-old products that are trying to bolt this stuff on, and it doesn't really do it. From either a throughput perspective, what I'd say is the kind of sophistication in the analysis, and obviously the easy delivery to take action on it, right? That's what's really becomes really huge in our workflow integration with the, we only work with a certain number of CRMs because we want to make sure that if you start on day one, you're 100% being able to write that data back to trigger workflows so that the agents, whoever it is, can take action, reduce your escalations, get in front of critical situations, export health score to a gain site, something like that. Take action, get value based on these insights, because the insights themselves are valuable. But the real thing is, can you get ahead of the things they're telling you so that you improve the customer relationship? That's where the real value lies, right? And if you don't have the workflow integration, if you're not in that, you're just a bolt-on tool. Even if it's bought by the CRM company, or sold by the CRM company, you're not really, fully integrated. You're getting delays, you're getting silos, you're doing all those things that you're just, perpetuating the cycle. So it's really important for us to integrate those insights into action, right?
So let's come back to the core question. The core question being, now we have this vendor of software which has a pricing model. This pricing model, well, in former times it was perpetual. Right now you are usually going by data volume, by number of users, by contacts in the database if it's a marketing system, or interactions sometimes even. So, which are metrics that are utterly unrelated to value. So this is one thing. The other thing is they, of course, and there I contradict your earlier statement that subscriptions is vastly different from perpetual license. Theoretically, yes, but the way it's implemented, it's a clear no. So reality is different from theory. That's the same reason why communism
it becomes amortization rather than value creation.
Yeah. Yep. So now, how is it possible to, well, first tie output value for the customer to the price? Means that they see some positive return from themselves early on, other than in a promise. Because that's what it is, right? They pay first and then have the value probably later.
Well, I think it's, I think first you need to understand your use cases, right? Mm-hmm. And well, first this creates, first you got to divorce yourself from user-based pricing, volume, data volume, whatever it is, and start to figure out what is the value that you generate, right? Take a Twilio, right? It's, what is the cost of building and maintaining a communication system that has infinite scale for your company, and what is that worth? And then you break that down into micro increments about how you're going to use that, and the consumption equals value, right? That's an easy one. But they're
Does it?
even moving into, I mean, I think it's easier, but that's the thing. But then you look at what they're doing with segment and the data and the insights that they can provide. Could you generate the type of segmentation, data insights, targeting, all the things that they're going to enable people to do with the data systems that they're providing? It would be very expensive to build that too. So like how many things do you want to consume there? So you can really see a consumption-based, usage-based pricing model working for them. It's a lot harder when you get into like the systems of record, like a Salesforce automation tool, right? Because I might use the system and I might say, maybe it's a little easier to do things, but am I closing deals because I have an SFA? Probably not, right? But where's the efficiency? And then how do you meet and regulate that? Like, so you say, you've got to get some baselines of like, if I didn't have this system, my sales guys could do X amount, and with it, they can do X plus, right? And you can start to measure based on that. And workflow really helps with that, right? Like how many manual steps can you reduce that therefore reduces time, and it gives people that, and you can figure that out, right? What makes it easy for someone like us to start thinking of value and potentially being able to move to these types of models is we're doing things that transactional systems don't do, right? We're analyzing data and unstructured data and stuff that they just don't do natively. So I can say, here's a prediction, and I'm going to give you any number of predictions, and you can consume them in one way, and you can say, I accept this prediction and I think it's right. And then we can measure the effect of that, right? And that is a separate value lever, right? We can say, like I said, just talking about it, like case assignment, right? Like if I'm manually assigning cases for reassignment, like this is a different use case, but it's like, or if cases come in and I'm doing skills-based routing, and that might not be great. I have to reassign that because no one updated the skills system and there's new agents that are coming and going. It's like, who wants to do that, right? So if I can make sure that in 30 seconds to a minute, the right agent is starting to work that case based on any number of factors, skill set, past relationship with the customer, availability, average time of them to work a case, therefore, like what is their queue, and all those types of things that a smart system like ours can do, there's value to that. Again, would you pay $1 to get the right person on the case 30 minutes faster than if you had a human doing it? Or an hour faster, right? Because sometimes if the guy's busy, the manager's busy working on an escalation, boom, these things are coming up, right? Automate that, right? So these are the types of things where we can easily assess value, or at least put a money amount on it, where someone would say, of course, I would pay that much for that, right? The CRM, I think it's a little different, So that's where, like, I
pay more.
Yeah,
I even would pay more because you save more than $1. Yeah,
absolutely,
and,
absolutely.
Yeah.
I'm throwing out small numbers to show that when it gets at scale, that's when you can start. Because look, you do the analysis and you start to realize that if you really deliver, right, focus on 5, maybe not even 5, focus on 3 or 4 like value driving things that absolutely move the needle in terms of making people productive in the way they want to be productive, retaining employees, keeping them happy. And then obviously then there's the ones that like have a hard ROI of like, if I reduce my escalations, I reduce the cost of addressing those escalations, things like that. And you can calculate that, and it becomes like 10x ROI against what they're spending with us, right? 20x, right? So the point is, how do we generate value in a way that it's absolutely proven and absolutely becomes a no-brainer to keep our, we've never lost a customer. How do we keep that rolling in an even easier way? How do we get people started faster, right? That's the idea, right? Is getting people to come in and say, look, let's just, why wouldn't we do this? Because at small numbers, it makes sense. It's the rounding error. And at big numbers, the ROI more than makes up for it. So that's the way I think companies need to be thinking, right? I'm not saying that the industry is not ready for that, because there's a lot of public companies that would probably blow up if they stood on their value, right? And I don't mean that as a good or bad thing. I just think it's just a real thing, right? And it's hard to pivot and articulate on that value for something that's been so priced out as a certain way, right? The things I like about the value stuff is like there is no concept of shelfware, right? Because even I'm sure there's companies that we have as customers and that everyone knows their name. They sell, even in a SaaS model, sell seats that aren't actually being used today, right? They might not be used for 6 months. They might not be used for 2 years, right? Whatever it is. But big, hulky deals, that kind of stuff happens. But on value-based and consumption-based models, you have access to anything, right? Because it's about driving adoption. You look at Fivetran, you look at Snowflake, you look at all these companies that are doing that. They're doing it well because they're opening they're not fencing adoption to get money now. They understand that in the future, right? It probably drives Wall Street analysts crazy because it's less predictable, right? But the customer's happy, right? The customer gets what they need and they grow. And it's like feeding the goldfish and they'll get as big as the bowl, right? It's, just keep getting a bigger bowl, right? And just keep feeding it, right? Because if the value's there, they're going to keep consuming it, right? And that value will be easily articulated because we have the tools to do that today, by analyzing usage, analyzing consumption, analyzing outputs and outcomes in dashboards and other stuff that you can say, and with a customer success mindset across B2B tech in QBRs, you're reviewing it all for them. You're handing it to them, saying, here, take this to the CFO. How can you not renew if we've given you all this value, right? So, I mean, we're pivoting there slowly. Pricing, I think, is just the last bastion. The customer success mindset, like Gainsight is such a huge growing company because people are starting to take that mindset, right? But we've just got to kind of get off companies like Salesforce broke us from the perpetual license model. Now we need somebody to break us from the SaaS user-based pricing model, or even the volume-based pricing, the data volume-based pricing model. Some of these guys who are still usage-based, they might not be value-based, or usage-based. So it's it's happening. It's coming. I believe it.
Who could that be? This company or these companies that probably needs more than one of sufficient size that means impact that could drive an adoption like that.
Yeah, it's companies with analytics at their heart, right? Because it's companies where data is an afterthought and analytics is the DNA. Because in that regard, you live on outputs, right? You live on outcomes, you live on insights. Whereas the other guys you're working in like transactions, you're working in operations, and it's you got to have it, right? And that's why, like I said, that's why I wouldn't be rushing to change if I was a Zendesk. It's the agents need to use this every day, so it's like there's an alignment in what they provide and the pricing. You could almost say they're value-based pricing in that. If try to do your job without Zendesk for a day, you lose your mind, right? Where are you getting the information from? Where are you finding out the back end of this? Where's your knowledge? All that kind of stuff. So there is value driving. It's just not articulated in a way where the pricing aligns with your actual, your realization of value, right? When you look at these analytics companies, they provide value in a different way, right? And you can scale that up and down as you please and pay for that accordingly, right? Go ahead, Ralph. I know you have questions.
Coming from the value provision angle, so that there, I think it was end of 2020, beginning of 21, there was a study amongst CRM people, salespeople basically, not CRM people, salespeople who concluded on a majority that an implementation of a Salesforce automation system actually cost money. So where is it then the value? Could be the same with Zendesk. The processes have become that complicated that there is no value add anymore. Might be the same. So just making this up right now, right? And so
it's at the end of the day, there's a cost to doing business, right? Yeah. And that's what I'm saying is I think that some of these guys might not, it's going to be harder for them because where are the business outcomes easily proven, right? Where is the improvement in business outcomes easily proven? I don't say I have the answer to that, right? And I've wrestled with this when I was more down in the world of CRM. It was really hard for that because it's like, how do we defend what we say we're going to do? Right. And that became, and there were different ways that you could kind of start to figure out different pricing and different, let's give you data. Let's give you pipes to data and that'll be part of what you pay for. There's a value to that because if you tell me what industry you sell to and I can preload your data with that, with every, person that aligns to that SIC code, there's a value to that. Absolutely. But no one's doing that well today, right? Like no one's got that figured out. And especially not charging for it in a way that's either fair or even aligned with value. But what I would say is, it's tough. Like there is a cost to doing business, right? And it's kind of like what I used to be able to say with like sugar, right? Was, years ago when mobile was becoming a thing, right? And how old we've been around. Like, these systems predate even having a cell phone, right? Or at least a smartphone. And I'd say, how much are you paying remember like smartphone, like, the sales guy would have like a $65 a month BlackBerry fee. I said, we're less than that. So it becomes like, the cost of your business. So you can easily align the value that we provide. Like, wouldn't you like them to actually have all their stuff in one place for less than the cost of their cell phone bill, right? So, I mean, like, there's ways that you can align the cost of business to at least some value gained from it, even if it's a net cost, not a net value, right? I think ROI tracking in CRM is really tough because it's a commodity. It's needed. It does help, but where does it accelerate the business? I don't always know, right? Like in support, it's actually easier because it's in my mind, it's like, look, you got to have your agents working. You need an agent desktop, right? And you need to centralize that stuff. And you need to align the case with the account and the knowledge and blah, 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 and have a history. And there's a value to that because if they didn't have it, it would be horrible. Sales guys will always say, I can do my job with or without it. So the SFA one is always kind of hard because there's a time productivity, but they got to use it. Agents have to use it. They can't go outside the system, right? Okay. So it's a little easier to kind of to fence that in and start to gain some value concepts out of it. But with Salesforce automation, it's always difficult because the sales, rogue sales guys who still make their number, no one's going to penalize them for not using the system, right? There's someone who could use the system religiously, love the system. My sales cloud, I wouldn't do anything with that. And then they're at 18% of quota. Right? So did the CRM fail that? Or are they just a bad salesperson? I don't know.
Actually, both people get penalized because usually the commission is paid out of the data in the system.
Yeah, right. Exactly. But you know what I'm saying. I mean, but that's kind of funny thing. Like Salesforce automation is a tough one.
Means we got a second avenue for inroads into value-based pricing. It's not only analytics companies, but also service companies or companies that provide services that support service. Also, service software.
Yeah, no, I'd say that too.
Yeah. I was
because
wondering,
you're delivering on something, and you can measure that.
If you can help me to better understand, you analyze in the logic of analyzable data. Analyzable data in numbers, figures, or also in language, such as sentiment analysis. So you listen and help listening and can then help a call center agent to do the right scripting if it is existing.
Sure. I mean, the way we look at it, it's more our benefits are in a B2B relationship where there's not a lot of urgency. So it's a lot easier to do what we do around our sentiment, health score, and predictions around like churn and things like that, because we're looking at like, go ahead. You get more to it.
So we are not in the real time, but we have time to analyze and we dig in data and we screen data, such as that a human being is sending in a report and we can automate read that report. We are not real-time listening because I want to find the differentiator.
Exactly.
You would be a fantastic add-on, for instance, to solutions around Genesis and other which are in communication and profit centers with call centers and all that.
Yeah, and well, I mean, if it's a B2B deployment of Genesis, and then you're taking the XML file and putting that into a CRM system, we'll read that and we'll tell you things that you wouldn't get from the post-call survey, right? And you wouldn't get from just any of the fields that are in the CRM, right? Because we're reading all those notes and analyzing that and ingesting that. So we'll tell you, more importantly, because we align that it's not just the case, it's not just the individual conversation. We're looking at this historically over time, and we're analyzing this holistically. Whereas those observes and the frames and those guys, they do a really important thing in helping that agent who's on the call. Super cool stuff that they do. We don't do that. We don't want to do it today. I mean, we're helping people understand where the B2B relationship is. It's like a Schrodinger's kind of thing, right? Like our health scoring is like, here's your score, right? Here's the number, and here's the trend line. So it's like, if your number is bad, you know to take action, but your number might be good right now, but it's not as good as it once was. So you want to see the particle in the wave, right? And that's kind of what we do. And that's hugely important, because we're not about just helping support. We're about feeding customer success. Because when you have those two items that you can immediately export to someone who would normally be like a game site user or a Sales Cloud user, if they're success using Sales Cloud, they can look at that and they can say, great. And then, because it's like you're taking users out of the equation, and you can just click through and start to go back and start looking in a timeline view. Here's all those interactions that happened, which you'd never get in Gainsight. You probably don't have the time to go look at it even in Zendesk or Service Cloud, or you might not even have access to that as a sales guy. You don't have access to the Zendesk, but we're showing it to you, and you say, oh, I better bring this up in the QBR, because if I can be proactive about this, they know that we care. They know that we're aligned. They know that this is a success culture and not a department, right? So these are the ways that we can change people's culture to be more proactive. And that's put a price tag on that. Try to, right? It's huge. And so that's the kind of stuff that we do. Very B2B, very about the relationship and not just that moment in time. We'll get there, and we'll probably have that as a facet of what we do. But today, I think it's more important to show the aggregate value of support interactions to the entire business. And we feed them out, product teams. Hey, here's people asking for stuff in the product that would normally just got stuffed into the CRM record. This is real voice of the customer asking, saying, hey, the product doesn't do this today, and it's really annoying. Can it do this, right? Send that over, right? That needs to be exported in an almost automated fashion, right? How do we do that? Getting to that, well, that's not a support tool for an agent. That's helping an engineer.
You thought also that, and make clear, it is a team effort. If you go from one person's success to the team delivering success to the customer as a team effort, it's a soccer game with 11 players plus goalkeepers plus audience, so everybody
plus
needs
coaches,
to become
managers, trainers.
Thank you. You're so right. And just taking that example to show up, it's not the one who is shooting a goal or the one who as goalkeeper is unhappily taking in a goal. It is that the whole team has to play in the same direction to make customers more happy. And you mentioned that this is a success culture. What is your observation for going through the markets? Do we have already such a success culture which is accepting value-based pricing?
I don't think we're there yet, but I think this is where we're going, and that's the idea. This is the really cool thing is as these stars align, right? What do we need? What did we need as we made this huge giant market shift from perpetual license, people who sold, and then VARs and SIs who deployed, and then maintenance contracts, right? You were fighting for 20% of what you sold, right? At best, right? We moved to the subscription model where we're hopefully going retention plus, right? What's the holy grail is 125, 150 net dollar retention. You're crushing it if every customer is paying you 20 to 30% more each year. That's amazing, right? And that's what we're going for. But so what had to change, right? The delivery of the software, like I said, the sales and success model had to change. The vendor had to take on more of that responsibility, and they are.
Yeah.
So now what is happening is as we create a success culture, not a success department, right? It's like, why do we have chief customer officers, right? Because they're supposed to be creating, and inculcating, and I don't want to say enforcing, but really, promoting and really affecting a success culture. And when you have a success culture, you've got people, process, technology in place that is obviously around success, right? Which is renewals, upsell, net dollars, all these metrics, right? Mm-hmm. The cool thing is now is as the technology consumes, analyzes, outputs, and you take action on the data and all that kind of stuff, right? As that gets all integrated, we can measure success effectiveness. and all those other inputs, it's the CRM, it's the data warehouse, it's all those things, they become commodities, and that price is getting pushed down and down and down. Because the cool thing is that if I can tell you how your success is working, SupportLogic can do that, and there's a couple other vendors. If Gainsight gets better at that, probably by white labeling our stuff, maybe. Wink, wink. No, I don't know. But, like doing something like that, right? It's that becomes a clear value, because you're measuring the effectiveness of that whole culture change, right? So we're now in the process of all that coming together, right? We're creating the Pangea of success, right? Of people, process, and technology coming together. Then we can measure it. Because today there's still a lot of silos. It's still like, look, we're seeing more and more companies coming together where success and support are the same organization. And I like that. I believe that. Mm-hmm. So Click, the analytics company, and Daniel Coulet spoke at one of our events. He's the head of support and success. He runs both, right? Because they both have the same prime directive and goals, right? Their metrics should be absolutely the same, right? And that's the whole thing. So I think as we come to, as these things form, and then the technology that has all this, it can consume all this in one way, and then give us the insights, allow us to take action, and then measure the effectiveness. Value-based pricing becomes a no-brainer on that, because because the value can be proven. Today, there's a lot of broken up silos, and the continents are all apart, and there's oceans, right? So, but once we get to my weird Pangea metaphor, we can move to value-based pricing much more easily, because everything's working in concert for like one goal, which is, churn and net dollar retention. And once we can show the moving line on that, we can say, give us the percentage that we deserve. I'm not saying anybody's there yet, but that's where it becomes a no-brainer in our world. Yeah. There's other different areas of software and other hardware and blah, 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 and more consumer stuff. I don't know. But for our world around, where sales, marketing, support, success, and all that stuff, and DevOps and delivery and all those things can come together, share a vision. And I'm not saying it's one software, but if we can, at least the analytics company that shows how you're doing it, and has a role, because they're the ones that are giving you the insights based on all those data points, they can charge on value, I believe. Because it's like e-commerce, right? If you're making it easier for people to buy from you, and you're not going to build that yourself, cost of business, give me 2% of that, 1.5%, or whatever you negotiate, right? It's the same idea, right? It's how do we become Stripe, right? How do analytics companies become something that is absolutely built in as a value and understood and well articulated and proven, so that it becomes a cost of doing business, so to speak, that is a rounding error. And you're totally stoked to give someone 1% or 2% of every dollar you make, because you wouldn't have made it so easily without them, right? Or it would only have been 50 cents. We made it $1, right? So, that's the kind of thing. So, I mean, I think it's moving towards that. But there's a lot of contingencies, I think, right now.
Yeah. What does it take to convince the C-suite to move that way?
Great question. And I think this is where we focus a lot of our development right now. Is a lot of like, you look at a CRM dashboard, right? And there's important stuff in there, right? It's like, well, how many cases did I close? What's the close? What's our pipeline? What's all that? But that's not telling you the value of what the CRM is providing, right? So what I'm, not me, but what the team at SupportLogic, for example, is building is, how do we create dashboards that tell you gave us these inputs. This is what a case costs. This is what an escalated case costs. This is your escalation rate. So when we take someone whose escalation rate was 4% down to 1.7%, here's your value for that. Because when you look at your cost of escalations, and we've reduced that by 58%, are we sitting here giving you, here's a chunk of, no, but has that budget been better utilized because your 12 escalations went down to 5 that you get per month or whatever it is, that's huge, right? That's huge value. And we want to be able to articulate that without having to go read the data, create a QBR report that we hand to them. We want a sweet person to be able to log in every day and say, here's how it's going, and here's the trend line. Against predictions, against sentiment, against churn, against all that kind of stuff. And not just what is it, but what's the value of it? Because that's where we go from zero churn to incredible net dollar retention, right? Because we articulate the value. We want to get there too. I mean, we're building that now, right? That's, we're still a young company. Like we built the operational stuff, predict the escalation, predict the churn, look at your sentiment, analyze cases to do reviews and backlog, optimization, look at health score, that kind of stuff. But now what's the value of that? So that's like the phase 2. And that's going to be like amazing. Like I'm so stoked to see where we're going with that, because that's where the C-suite buy in. Obviously the managers and the agents love it already. But they don't necessarily care about the value, because it's just helping them every day. But CFOs care about the value, right? Mm-hmm. So building that for them is a huge part of what we're building now.
C-suite and line of business have often different definitions of ROI, different definitions of value. If you talk to someone who's in the trenches every day, they're going to look at how much time are they saving, how much easier is it to accomplish their job, how it's going to be anecdotal things like that. The further up you get in the company, it's going to be how what multiple of what I spent on your product am I getting back? That kind of ROI.
Exactly.
Or it's going to be how quickly do I get that amount back?
Exactly. So
I got it right.
That case review. Yeah, exactly. But that's the point. Here's the dual nature of it, because like we call it ACE, agent and case evaluation, right? And it's that's one of the things you're saying. Like the managers love it because they can do 50x the amount of reviews in the same amount of time, right? Because we're analyzing all the cases, we're serving it up silver platter. They love that. But what that also enables them to do is they're coaching people. So if the agent, who normally has a boring 6-month ramp time until they're just on their own taking cases, if we can do that in 4 months, because they're getting coached early and often, they're learning, they're reading these things, they're understanding it, we're sharing that, and they're staying around longer because they're getting real-time coached. It's not at the end of the week or end of the month, they sit down and the manager just tells them all the things they did wrong. Instead, it's kudos. This is great. Hey, you could have done that this way. Maybe next time you get, and also we read and we find out when agents are getting abused. That's like our little secret. Like customers are mean to support agents, and we find that out so that the manager can come in and say, hey, you don't deserve that. Please don't take that don't take it personally. Don't take it this way. And that helps. So we can say, look, if we can shorten your onboarding time per agent 2 weeks, right? That has a dollar amount of how much ROI you're getting per agent. If we can extend their life cycle for 2 months before they burn out or even leave the department and go somewhere else, that is a huge thing. So it's like the managers and the agents like it for this reason, just like you said, has no real dollar amount other than productivity and just being happier. But the CFO says, oh, you just saved me $12,000 for every 2 weeks you're increasing onboarding, because I'm getting that ROI. They're being productive now. They're not sitting in training, right? That at scale, we've got companies that have 2,000 agents with like double-digit percentage churn rates per year. If I can get you $12,000 more productivity per year per agent, and you have 100 people like coming and going, that's huge. That pays for the product right there, let alone the escalation, all that kind of, you know what I'm saying? So these become, all these interesting things that we can do. So you're absolutely right, Marshall. I mean, it's a 2-factor. So how do I create the dashboard that says, here's all the time you saved, and then here's all the money you created, right? Here's the ROI because you got this much value out of your agents that you wouldn't have gotten without us.
Yeah, time,
CFOs
money,
love the latter, the former manager. Yep.
The obvious follow-up question, of course, is how to attribute it to a single piece of software.
That's the cool thing about what we do. You can't do this without us. We're literally just doing it.
Bummer.
No, I mean, I'm not trying to be funny. I'm not trying to be funny, right?
No,
and I'm not trying to be.
No. Same here.
But that's
Same
what's
here.
really cool is like it's sitting inside. Like this is happening. This is only happening inside our application.
Mm-hmm.
Therefore, it's only like the results are only due to what we've done. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
so that's where that's why I love what we do. Like our case assignment. If you're utilizing our case assignment, then the cases are getting assigned. Coveo split their mean time to resolution in half by 53% from 4 days to 2 days using our automated case assignment to get the best, because they do a phenomenal job of defraying agents getting, you know what I mean? They're a self-service company, right? They're a contextual intelligence company. They should be able to get people answers, right? But it's not always the case, right? So like they've got a lot of customers, a lot of cases, a lot of that windows down. But when a human gets there, they want to make sure that that experience is awesome. And they went from 4 days, which is pretty damn good for a B2B software company with hard problems they got to fix, down to 2 days because they're getting the right person, immediately. That's huge, right? They can't do that with anything else. So we're 100% showing our value because we're 100% doing the work. So that's why it's really cool, because that's what I'm saying. It's like you have a great sales guy who uses your SFA tool. It was his 130% quota attainment because he used a sales cloud? Maybe. Probably not, but maybe, right? But for us, it's like they're taking action on our insights that they cannot get anywhere else. You can't sit there and say, I think that case 345 is going to escalate. We're sending you that, 3 hours, 3 days before that escalation happens, right? You're not doing that yourself when you have 100,000 cases.
No, let's take a slightly more complicated case where it is not that easy to attribute it to one piece of software. How to still get the link? Because I mean, showing value in one particular instance is fine, but at the end of the day, it should be generically possible.
Yeah, I'm not saying I have an answer for that, and that's why it becomes difficult.
I think that's why you have an idea. just after ideas here.
Well, it's got, like it's data.
There will not be a perfect solution, I guess.
Prove it out. Yeah. Like if you're not monitoring and you're not workflowing and you're not tracking the data as it moves, right? Because data means anything at this point, right? Like it could be attributable to people, it could be a record, it could be sentiment things, like whatever it is, insights, alerts, notifications. If you're not tracking that data, then you're not going to be able to do that. You're not going to be able to show any value creation, right? And that's, I think, where a lot of the other systems are going to have to do a lot of work because they've been transactional, like systems of record that have been must-haves or gotta have to do business for certain sizes of businesses for 20 plus years. No one questioned that because that's just the way it was done. And I think, like, when you look at companies' investments and what they're doing, I think they see that this needs to change, right? You need to be able to show the data better. You need to be able to get better data. Right? At the end of the day, for the people below us, right? The cool thing for us is we're just looking at your unstructured data. So like just attach it as a note or put it on an object in Salesforce and we'll pull it in. Like you don't have to have perfect data for us to actually give good insights, right? That's like, because we all know that CRM systems don't always have great data, right? But if I'm telling you, because if all I need to know is who's the account, right? Who's the agent? And then here's all their interactions. I can give you a wealth of insights that you're not going to get from your CRM ever, let alone if your data is perfect. So that's the kind of thing. So the CRMs are going to rely on people like us to actually start driving value, because the dirty secret is the data's always been terrible, right? Especially in the sales. We don't really help the sales teams yet. Success we do, but the sales teams, it's all about entering the data. We don't enter data. We might write back some comments and kick some workflows off. But the idea is we're looking at that vast amounts of unstructured data. Sometimes our cases have like 30 back and forths because these cases take weeks or sometimes months to resolve. Big, heavy, important B2B, hardware, software, you're working on stuff. It's a deployment issue that's going on and back and forth. And we're telling you what's going on in that without having to go and read 30 emails back and forth, giving you that in this tight little window of like, here's where there's an issue. Here's where there's not an issue. Here's where the agent screwed up. Here's where the product screwed up, right? Telling you all these different things where you can take quick action, that generates value. So I think it comes down to like how you leverage the data if you're a provider, right? It's easy for us because we're built for unstructured data. We're really lucky, right? Being the guys who have to work on the core system and the relational database, trying to create more insight and value-based analytics from that. That's a work cut out for you, right? And like I said, I'm not saying these systems aren't important. They're incredibly important. But because they're so utilized and they're so ambivalently looked at, I'll say, by different people in the company, the data becomes questionable to when you're trying to analyze it as only CRM data. But once you start to do what we do is look at the unstructured data that just gets thrown in as attachments, it's so much easier because an email, it has inherent structure for its own, right? Got the sender, subject, who received it, and then the body. It's all we got to read, man. It's so, and we're just using our tools in the NLP and our AI and ML to go after that. So, and then we marry that to what's usually the metadata that is pretty well done, right? Like we always know who the account is. We always, we know the case status, things like that, the stuff that they do. And support is typically more disciplined, I guess is a great way to say, versus other departments and their use of CRM tools, because they have protocols, they have rubrics, and they know what they're doing, and there's a structure to that. And a lot of times it's a case might come in that someone filled out from a form and from a thing, and that comes in. It's a lot of easy information to attach that to the record, right? So we're kind of lucky there, right? I'm glad we're not like an SFA analytics tool.
In our pre-talks, you brought an interesting other concept into the value-based pricing discussion, which is product-led growth. This is probably something that begs some or asks for some explanation. I think the thought is interesting. It's fascinating.
Yeah. Well, look, I think what do we, where are we seeing some of the most interesting unicorns and decacorns or other stuff? They're all product-led growth companies, a lot of them. Companies that are product-led growth get to $1 billion valuation like exponentially faster than companies that don't do that, right? That have big enterprise sales from day one, right? And we want to learn from those companies because a lot of them are our customers too. But it's the idea that if you can get people to start consuming your product, trying it out, and seeing value within like 2 weeks, you're going to have higher adoption rates. You're going to have higher value. And you look at like the Snowflakes and the Fivetrans and those types of companies that say, look, give us a few $1,000s or give us nothing, but start using it. And then we'll convert once you see value, that type of stuff. That's huge, because now you're not, the sales process changes to like, hey, let's get you using it, not let's explain a bunch of stuff and let's evangelize a bunch of stuff, right? And let's get you 15 pieces of content and let's get 19 people in a room and try to figure out that we can all agree to spend $500,000 on this, right? No, it's give us 25 grand, and in 3 months, you're gonna go one way or the other, right? You're gonna say, I agree or I disagree with the value that we can provide for you, right? And that's where product-led growth really kind of shines, right? Because it's about a little bit more about volume and customer acquisition with less friction, right? We call it the uncertainty tax, right? The enterprise software model is fraught with uncertainty, right? Like there's so many things like I just described that you got to do, and you got to do well to win hearts and minds. But if you just say, take the product, start using it, see if there's value, and then let's have a discussion on where you individually see the value based on your consumption, based on the size and scope of what you want to do with it, and then you pay us that, and it's win-win. There's no shelfware. There's no oversell. You're not under promising and over delivering. You're equalizing the promise to delivery of value, right? And that's really huge.
Oh,
What's our last call? I know we got about 2 minutes left.
It's been a hell of an hour, man. It just information back and forth. It's beautiful.
It just flew by. It just flew by. Now, if you have several customers with different needs and requirements, how to balance that out in a PLG environment? If you want to do product-led growth, because you have only so much development capacity, unless your AI is working really great.
Yeah, I think that's why it's interesting. Like you focus on like what I would call not evergreen, but like what Judy says always. Like when we were talking about, hey, how do we verticalize the product? She's like, oh, what are you talking about? Support is support. So focus on the things that are all the same across support, right? And that's the idea. So it's like if you're solving, if you're doing better business outcomes for a need that like a 20-person company and a 20,000-person company has, and then you're product led, that scales up and down easily. That actually solves the problem you're talking about in my mind. Where if you're actually just doing it in a way that, like, again, is there added complexity at scale? Sure, but But if people get to that by consuming it as they need it, then you're actually almost like better predicting like where should I put my resources to support that, because that becomes a kind of services and support of individual customers, and you can figure that out. But at the core end of like the engineering of the product, focus on better business outcomes across like pain points that are common across the industries and the types of business, department that the line of business that you're working on, and you'll be fine. Right. And that's what it is. It's like analytics is analytics, right? So it's like if I'm a 5-person department or, a 5,000 person whole company that wants to learn it, that just becomes a term, opening up the pipe. Right. So, and there's mechanisms in place for that. So I would say PLG solves a lot of those problems because you're not creating, oh, here's our addition for your company. Here's our addition for your size. No, it's everybody gets everything. Users go out the window. Modules go out the window. Features go out the window in terms of meeting and doling that and say, use what you want. Don't use what you want. Generate that value, and we'll charge you a fair price for it. That's the beauty of PLG,
So to formulate that equation that you brought forward, product-led growth leads to user-based or plus user-based billing leads to value-based pricing. Because
I think so. I mean,
that's
a fair equation. I think that's where it's going. And that's the cool thing is we have the measurement tools in place, the meter, we have all that stuff. It's all coming together to make that possible for the companies where it fits. I'm not saying everybody's going to be able to transition like that. Like how long did it take Adobe to become a subscription company, right? Like that kind of stuff. You know what I mean?
Ages.
Yeah. So I mean, and look, it was the right thing to do, and it's turned out to be awesome for them. So it's not everyone's going to be in there tomorrow, right? Or the day after these things all come together, but it's where we're going, right? People want and expect value, right? And that's where it's going.
And I take the perspective of a lot of agencies, creative agencies, which would like still now to kill Adobe for the change in the model. Because they are not happy at all. Not happy at all.
Of course. But it was the right choice for Adobe. They had to do it.
Okay.
Martin?
Your statement before Ralph's Adobe comment, not concert, comment, actually would have made the perfect famous last words.
Danke.
For this. You basically killed the pointy. The point. So
I'll say we'll fix it in post, but there is no post.
which is still good enough. Thanks, Martin. This was an hour that went by too fast.
Yeah,
by far.
That was great.
Yeah, this
As
was
always.
just a tempus fugit. Yeah, time flies. So it really was on. Well, supersonic.
Rocket-wise.
Rocket.
Yeah.
It's always fun.
Hypersonic.
I can talk to you guys anytime. I love the conversations.
Yeah.
Thanks for having me on, and thanks everyone out there for listening. As always, happy to continue these conversations with anybody else around. If you're looking to make these moves and share some of my goofball insights, I guess. So
and happy work anniversary, by the way. You said it was just over a year. So
Oh yeah, been over a year now. Yeah.
good job, man.
Yeah, it's fun. Yeah, it's always fun to stay at companies. I love
Beats the alternative.
Exactly. No, but it's been amazing, and SupportLogic's been such a great place to work. We're growing so fast, but also doing it in a way that I think is really aligned with where the industry's going. The support industry is changing, and we're helping that, and that's really cool. So we're super excited, and it just is, getting to go to work every day with great people, a great product in a great area. It's just been great. So thank you guys, and look forward to the next one.
Yep.
All right.
See you next time. Thanks to everybody who still is there. And see you next time.
All right, see y'all.
And now we go backstage.